Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Chris and Andre Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Chris and Andre Show. As always, we are your loyal hosts. I am Chris.
And I'm Andre.
And we are getting into the big rant this week. It's actually been a couple of weeks since we recorded. You may have noticed a little bit of absence there. I got caught up on all of the old episodes, so you didn't miss anything. Not missing anything at all, in fact. But some life, happening. Birth of a child, those sorts of things. Nothing major. Just I had to take a couple of weeks off for that. But we're back at it, and we've got a pretty juicy topic this week that we're going to be discussing. Infotainment. So I think there's a couple of different angles that we're kind of looking at this from. We've been sharing some articles back and forth over the last couple of weeks. We've talked a lot about John Oliver and some Daily Show stuff, Trevor Noah, those kinds of guys. But I know that there was something from Axios that you found today that you wanted to kind of kick things off with.
Yeah. So as we continue to look at these things, it's ironic. This article came out July 12th of 2022. The headline is "News Engagement Plummets as Americans Tune Out." Yeah, that title itself would not have made me click the article because it sounded kind of clickbaity. But there was a chart in my Google News feed that pretty much says that news engagement on social media, it's like down 50%. Cable news, prime time down 19%. News media app sessions. So that could be from various sources, down 16%. And unique visits to top 5 news sites, MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, down totally 18%. Fox News is up, I think, 19%.
Yeah, but I did how they lumped those all together, and then we're like, but really it's CNN and NBC or MSNBC that are just getting taken behind the woodshed, and Fox News is we're actually doing pretty good right now.
Yeah, they've got their alternative facts, and we'll give that to them. But the key thing from the why it matters section is Americans have grown exhausted from the constant barrage of bad headlines that have replaced Trump-era crises, scandals, and tweets. Sure, they're part of the problem. So their headline was not. I don't know who that really speaks to. I don't know if it speaks to journalists. I don't think it speaks to a vast majority of the American public, but they get their point across, and I don't doubt it.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different things that I took away from that. I mean, one, I think there is the element of an erosion of trust in news media. Right. So whether that's, people leaning towards Fox News because they feel like that's presenting a series of facts, we'll put the quotation marks around them,
right.
That line up with their beliefs, and so then they're just kind of ignoring everything else, and that's why we're seeing more in the Fox News. I think there's also the element of fatigue, it's been, 50 years, 40 years, something like that, since CNN kind of first came on and started doing this, or 30 years? I don't know.
I think 50s is kind of a stretch. So I think it's 30 plus, close to 40 years.
Okay.
Well, it's 30-ish years.
We'll call it 40 just for the sake of this conversation, because that's what I'm going to do. But yeah, I mean, after a while, we've talked about it before, you just kind of, everything is breaking news. And when everything is breaking news, nothing is breaking news in a sense.
And when everyone's super, no one will be.
So
CNN's been around for 42 years.
Pooh.
I think subconsciously I don't want to admit that because
yeah, I mean, you and CNN are kind of neck and neck there, right?
Wow, I'm sad now. But continue.
Well, yeah, I think that it's fatigue. It's and there's fatigue for a couple of different reasons. One, we've gone through so much over the last 5 years where everything was a new scandal or a new headline. Trump was doing something that not that it hadn't been done before, but that somebody in his position typically wasn't getting caught doing it regularly. And so to some degree it felt like we got just bombarded. I mean, I remember during the campaign, it was like every other day. First it was like every week, and then it was every other day, and then it was every day, and then it was every half a day, and something new would come out where you'd sit there and be like, oh, well, that's got to be it. I got to tune in because this is the thing that's finally gonna, like be the final nail in the coffin. And it wasn't. I mean, it never was. So what does that ultimately say when you get to a point where he's no longer in office, and so you don't have that? I mean, he's still around, obviously. The media is continuing to help make him relevant in a sense with the amount of attention that they pay to him and the fact that they want to carry his statements that he puts out, even though, I mean, I see it on Twitter all the time, or I used to when I was on Twitter, where people are retweeting or tweeting out his statements. And I'm like, the guy is banned from Twitter, but you feel the need to post his messages on Twitter. And I kind of, Trump's presidency is kind of like the perpetual like jump scare. So maybe the country got addicted to the, waiting for the jump scare. We knew it was going to happen. And what typically happens with those jump scares is nothing happens. So, every time I think about Trump being in the headline, I'm like, oh, here's another jump scare. So that legacy, it continues on. What's interesting is I watch reliable sources on Sunday on CNN, and Brian Stelter, I think I know I just butchered his last name. Yeah, you did.
Sorry, Brian.
It's okay.
But
I'm sure he's listening.
We're going to tag you, Brian, because I literally watch your... I think it's very rare I don't watch reliable sources. It's a fairly... well, I don't want to say consistent. It's a good attempt to try to bring some type of behind the curtain on news media. There have been times where there's a little bit of bias showing, and I just kind of I acknowledge it and I move on. But for the most part, it's somewhat fair. For example, this past week they had a journalist who's actually from the UK. She made a comparison between the UK, or like the BBC and American media, and the guy from the Washington Post took offense to it, but her fact was in point, which I can actually concur to. I listen to BBC America or the BBC World News every morning at 9:00, and it's facts. Nobody's trying to throw an opinion at you. To the contrast is American media, where there's an opinion. Like there's no mistaking the opinions that the anchors, I won't call them journalists, but the anchors have when it comes to covering a story.
Their personalities as much as anything at this point.
Sure, that's fair. That is very fair. Well, so CNN does a pretty good job of like the switch and bait. So they'll send John Berman to Ukraine because now he's no longer sitting at a desk; he's reporting from Kiev. Mm-hmm. And they'll send Jake Tapper to Kiev, and so there's
everybody goes to Kiev.
It was actually kind of bold, like Don Lemon in Kiev, or actually he didn't go to Kiev. He went to a city that was not under heavy bombardment, so it gives them some credibility. And I'm not saying that they are not journalists. I'm just saying it's definitely a ruse. It really is. On this past week, in that same session, towards the end of the episode, and I would give a critique there. If the show is called Reliable Sources, and you put one of the co-founders and editors of Vox on, and you put her in the last segment, which is like roughly 3 minutes, mm-hmm. to try to prove a point of, hey, this is wrong, and what can we do to fix it? He gave it little to no attention.
Right.
I found that very disappointing and blatant. And I'm looking at my notes here. Melissa Bell, right? That's a bigger issue than most of the things they were talking about. I really don't care about Elon Musk again and Twitter. That I think that is I think Twitter is a tool used by journalists, and they probably care more about it than most people. It's used by activists. They probably care about it more than most people. So Elon Musk buying or not buying Twitter, as I said months ago, not a big deal. It's probably not going to happen. And guess what? Man, if people would have listened to me about Bitcoin, they could have saved a lot of money.
Yeah, I don't have cable news, so I don't watch CNN live. But when you mentioned the reliable sources segment, specifically the one with the Vox News with Melissa Bell from Vox, I guess it's not Vox News, it's Vox Media. I went and checked it out. I wanted to watch that segment and kind of get a feel for what she was talking about. And she said a couple of things that I think were accurate, talking about the fact that the way that the news is covered these days, where it's Ukraine, we report live for 3 weeks and then, maybe a month, and then it's just kind of, all right, well, what's the next big thing that we can make a big deal out of? Yeah, we'll kind of touch on it every once in a while, but for the most part, we're done with that story. Was it Brian Stetter?
No, it's not.
Seltzer?
I'm going to Google it.
Captain Seltzer Water. I think was it him or he or she that asked, what do we do with the coverage? Can we actually affect change?
We started Vox really to help people understand the news. That was the first thing that we started thinking about 8 years ago. How do we help people understand what's happening, the context, the historical context? But now we're thinking more and more, not just about how to help people understand, but what to do with the next step when they have the information. What can they do with that information?
What can they do? That is really the key, isn't it, right? What can you do with the information?
Right.
Can you affect any change at all?
But yeah, this question of what do we do with this coverage? How does this ultimately impact us? And is there something that we can do to affect change? And I think, in the case of Ukraine, no, there's not anything directly that we're going to be able to do to solve the issue in Ukraine right now. That's, other than lobbying, or contacting our government officials, but even that I think is going to have minimal impact in that sort of situation.
Right.
You had mentioned something else. I don't think it was from that particular segment. Maybe it was from the earlier one, the Washington Post, where they talked about the fact that they try to find stories that appeal to their readership or their viewers. And I think when we were talking on the phone yesterday, you were kind of like, but that's bullshit. That's not at all what. And I think, I don't know, there's an element of it where, okay, maybe you craft the story to appeal to your readership or your viewers by writing your catchy headline, right? Your clickbaity title. But
right.
Beyond that, it's ultimately stuff that you are still choosing to report on for ad dollars, for revenue, for whatever it may be. But it's not necessarily like, this is what we think is going to be best for our readership. This is what...
What's interesting is that we literally, we mentioned this show because it's an input that I take. We're talking about it, but at the same time, I can say they're not listening.
Excuse me. I can't hear you.
Right? I'm just sitting here thinking in my head, wow, how many times can you restate the same problem? We literally are going to share this conversation, and at the same time we know it's not going to solve anything but they say they try to craft their content or their the stories they cover to the readers. Well, you're not listening. I can tell you flat out that you're not listening. We can critique what you're doing. I can critique and tell you that why would you give probably the most important item of a show name reliable sources? You give the topic that probably defines the title and supports the title less than 5 minutes.
And you stick it at the very end when most people have already changed the channel and haven't come back.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just find that very disappointing. And you're right. It's clickbait is what it is, and if you're a discerning reader and you've become accustomed to it or you become numb to it, the issue remains that you're only going to attract so many people to your title, and if the content is the contents of your message is pretty much lame duck type of stuff, nobody's going to go back, and the trust will continue to deteriorate. It's just really frustrating. It's very disappointing. And Mr. Stelter, this is not a knock against you. I think that you've covered some really interesting things about journalism, because me as a person, I personally believe that the argument that journalists make about freedom of the press is kind of pointless. Like, I just really believe that. I don't think it's unimportant. I just think that you guys, you talk about it, but you're not good stewards of the right that people are. One of the rights that people are so cautious of walking all over. I just think that journalists in general are poor stewards of that.
Yeah, and I think we're talking about clickbait, headlines and titles, and you touched on it that you either become immune or kind of numb to those effects eventually, and then you tune everything out altogether.
Right.
And it's not that you become better at discerning what's clickbaity and what's not necessarily. It's more, well, I know from my experience that I am unlikely to be able to trust this source to deliver on the promise of the headline, so I'm not going to bother engaging with it.
Right.
They wonder why, news viewership is down to its lowest point, even pre-pandemic numbers.
To be fair, it's all about it's infotainment, right? Joe, friend of the show, Joe, said this a couple of weeks ago, and we probably have a clip of it, where he just said that and I'm paraphrasing, so I don't want to take away from Joe's credit. We just it's like having the information in a more palatable form, and we're going to dig more into that as we go on. But I think he's not wrong. It's all about, can we keep people entertained for ad dollars, et cetera, et cetera. There's no incentive for a CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, OAN, or any even local news to report the news in an unbiased manner. Their incentive is to keep the lights on. As a business, I understand that, but I think that there's no. I know it's not a fiduciary relationship, but you're not building a relationship built on trust in many ways. So.
Well, and it's one thing when you have a news anchor who's talking about a story and says, to be clear, just for posterity's sake, so and so is a sponsor of this program, or X company
CNN is owned by Discovery Plus. Sure,
right.
Got it.
Yeah, things
Fantastic.
like that. Like, okay, at least be transparent about that relationship, and I think that is an important piece, because it absolutely has the potential, whether or not it happens all the time, it has the potential to impact the way that stories are reported, and I think people deserve to know that. Now, granted, you can do a little bit of research like I did this afternoon, looking up who owns the majority of mainstream media in the United States, and a couple of really concerning things. I mean, we talked about before, the Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos. CNN is owned by Discovery, AT&T, Warner Brothers, that whole massive conglomerate. Randall Stevenson, who is actually the president of the Boy Scouts of America, apparently is one of the largest stakeholders for both Warner Brothers and therefore CNN. I also discovered that there's a ton of local news stations that are owned by EW Scripps. So, that fancy spelling bee that gets put on every year? Same company owns 133 local news stations, or their affiliates. And it's the fourth largest local TV broadcaster. The second largest broadcaster of all ABC affiliates, which is kind of interesting.
Isn't Sinclair Broadcasting on most of this?
I think so. I think Sinclair or Hearst was the other one.
Right.
It's like those are 1, 2, and 3 in some order there. Obviously, we know Fox News is owned by News Corp, which is owned primarily, or has, Rupert Murdoch has a controlling stake in that company. But they also own 28 and operate 28 Fox News stations or Fox stations. 43 of them are under the Nexstar and 59 under Sinclair. So, again, major broadcasting kind of conglomerates here, right? These just... I don't think that it's helpful for the cause of the free press for these to be owned by essentially a small handful of organizations. It's the same thing with local newspapers. Like, I mean, that was the other thing that stood out to me, is that there's 672 major daily newspapers in this country, and more than 50% of them are owned by 7 companies.
Huh. That's depressing. And tangentially, I know some of this stuff, right? Like I'm a big consumer of CNBC. Not so much recently because their bias is showing in a lot of things, and some of their personalities are gut-wrenching, and it's really frustrating.
Unlike our personalities, which are sparkling.
Sparkle, sparkle.
It starts to. It's really depressing. But let's circle back around to to what that would lead them to do. So one thing that I've really started to get annoyed with is that you can't present a quote unquote expert on a situation and tell me about their book. Like, I'm beyond that. It's like, Chris Smith, author of How to, Fold 16 Ties while singing 3 pop tunes.
It's not the book that I wrote.
I don't know, but whatever.
It's called How to Make a Podcast Really, Really Popular in 383 Years.
Sure, great. So, I mean, like, I lose trust when you're inviting somebody on to sell a product.
Right.
And the second type of person I lose trust in, or you lose credibility, is like a Nina Turner. I'm sorry.
No, you don't have to apologize. I watched that clip. I mean, you should apologize for making me watch that because it was atrocious.
Well, this is John and Brianna. This is about life and death. So if the Democrats, my party, wants to push back the neo-fascist tidal wave that is happening from the courts to the streets, then it is going to have to deliver and change material conditions for the people.
That was a word in my head. He stole the word in my head.
I apologize.
It's... Why would you invite her on a show to... Not that she didn't have points. She did have points. I respect her points. I'm not going to even say opinions. But politically, Democrats do themselves a disjustice when they say we should fortify abortions on federal land. Are you crazy? Have you lost your fucking mind?
Ooh, even better, I saw somebody suggested that they just have a floating barge in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico to perform abortions for people in southern, southwest, and southeast states. Because, like, it's really easy for
feasible.
People to get out there. And
You can't drive to an abortion clinic, but you can get a ferry to a barge. So the segment was painful to watch, to say the least. I don't understand. I don't understand why you would want to have, to make the conversation that much more divisive. You have again, it would be quote unquote be a colleague, a Democratic strategist, and you have Nina Turner, who, yes, it is important, but she's still not saying the things that should be happening. Why are we still looking after a federal solution to these problems? Like, if 22 states are enacting these laws, why aren't we focused on the why don't Democrats have a strategy to like win over these Democratic states? Why is she still advocating, expanding the court? That makes literally no sense. That would be tit for tat.
Happen.
It can happen. The court's been expanded, I believe, twice.
No. But I'm saying there's nothing that they can do right now to expand the court.
Right.
Even
and
come November.
Even that point, yeah. But it's not even a good strategy.
No, it's not, because you're absolutely right. All that happens when you expand the court for this particular purpose is they will turn around and do the exact same thing given the opportunity. I mean, look at what happened with gerrymandering in North Carolina, right? For years, the Democrats gerrymandered stuff in their favor. Republicans got control, and then they made it so much worse. And that's not to say that the Democrats were right when they did it. They were absolutely wrong. We've gone on and on about gerrymandering before, so I won't belabor the point, but it's just that when I don't know, I thought it was interesting. We talked a while back about the President Biden on the Jimmy Kimmel show. And one of the things that I actually appreciated his answer about was when Jimmy asked him, well, you're playing Monopoly with somebody who refuses to pass go and, collect, isn't playing the game fairly, essentially. They're cheating. They're stealing money out of the bank. And President Biden's response was, but if we break the rules for our own benefit, then our entire democracy is at risk. We're essentially throwing that away because we've said there's no point in trying to play fair. There's no point in following the rules. And then I believe that it ultimately just leads to a point of making it okay for the rules to be broken even more by both sides. That it does become this, building this crescendo of rule breaking until there's really nothing left at that point.
It's a shell of the former existence. And I think, and I don't know Nina Turner. I'm just telling, like, every time I've seen her, I watched a speech she gave in Ohio for Bernie Sanders years ago. I can't remember which time. It may have been 2020. She's ineffective. There's no doubt in my mind why she's a one-term congresswoman.
Well, and I guess that was going to be my question: is what is her relevancy to any of this?
She's loud and she hypes stuff up. I think a producer says, "How do we make this a good clip?" Basically, so she's getting played. And Miss Turner, I'm not trying to maybe again open invitation. Maybe you can enlighten me in what you're saying. I can tell you as a person listening to the things you say, yes, there are life and death situations for people that are not white in this country, that live in lower income parts of this country, but your strategy misses across the board. It gets people very emotionally charged, but it doesn't do anything. You're like a hype man.
Well, and it felt to me like in that segment, it was very, let me play to the things that I believe are going to, get coverage. Not necessarily
I don't think that's her bag, though. I think her bag is she's very passionate about what she believes in, and that's fine. That is fine, and that may. I don't disagree with activists, but I think activists, their problem is they aren't the people that execute the plans. They do a very good job of informing people and getting people to be on the same page about the specific problem. But they're not executors. They do not execute. That is not their gift. And I think there is a place for activism. I just don't think that I don't think activists come with strategy.
Yeah, I guess the specific thing that kind of stood out to me, she said something.
I'm sorry. She is like the Flavor Flav of politics.
Well, and that was the thing. She said something to the effect of, we need to be worried about the big mamas and the big daddies in the hood.
We should measure based on what is best for Big Mama and Big Daddy in hoods where people are misunderstood, whether it's the rural hood, the urban hood, or the suburban hood. That is how you settle whether or not there will be a primary.
And whether it's the urban hood or the suburban hood, and it was just...
Or the rural hood.
Yeah,
What are you talking about?
I was just kind of like, all right, you lost me there.
She's literally, in my opinion, she's another Democratic hype man. It's like, yo, you guys are talking loud but saying nothing. You're talking loud and you're doing nothing.
Doing nothing, yeah.
And I think that Democrats, like, if you replace one word or one letter in the word, it goes from hope to hype. And they can play those cards.
I thought you were going to go from Democrats to Democrats.
No. I mean, they are the party of hope, but they're also the party of hype, man. And it's like they're ineffective. And for media, especially like for the news media, to keep playing to that, it's not informing people. I think it's a waste of time. And Miss Turner, I'm being honest. I'm just telling you like how your message is received. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe you can enlighten me. But I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just saying, like, yeah, you're that's not hitting for everybody. What you're saying doesn't hit well with everybody.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things our country has a problem with is being able to critique and say, no, that didn't work well for me. So
well, because especially lately, it feels like when you do that, you are often met with a lot of ridicule because you are, by extension, critiquing the underlying point or like the underlying issue, right? That if you don't just go along with, it's like part of it, yeah, it's like the whole cancel culture crap, but I think it's more than that too, where it's anytime that you disagree with the voices in the room, they all turn on you and are like, oh, how can you possibly not just believe that, this is so... And it's like, no, I believe this is an important issue. I just don't necessarily think that these are the right solutions or this is the best way for us to be talking about it or that this is actually going to lead to anything productive in the long run. So how about... No, you have to just accept that this is the way that it's going.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
If we're trying to fix the problem, you can't keep hooping and hollering about what this and that and doing nothing. And I find it very hard to believe that that is the norm. Like that is literally the norm. And it's cancel culture. I don't care about cancel culture. I don't care about you gotta be woke. No, some things are just they're not truthful, and you gotta say it's not truthful. Yeah, I care about what happens in the inner city, but am I going to call? To be fair, she can say the rural hood, right? There are a lot of trailer parks and places like that where people are strung out on meth, but meth isn't the issue. Opioids aren't the issue. Like when I drive through Richlands, North Carolina, there's a sign that says, "Don't do meth," right? And that is not a joke. That is not hyperbole. There's literally a handwritten sign that says don't, or spray painted sign that says don't do meth, right? The root of the problem is we don't have, as a country, a serious view on what drugs do to certain communities. So if you go back to the late 70s into the 80s with the crack epidemic, now we're calling it a crack epidemic as opposed to a crime wave. Yeah. We did nothing then. But you fast forward, and when it hits the suburbs, or it hits like more of white America, and now it's an epidemic. Now it's a meth epidemic. Now it's an opioid epidemic. Now it's a national crisis. So what I'm saying is, yeah, I agree that there are problems. I'm asking you, what are the solutions? What are practical solutions we can put in place? So your cancel culture because you're not listening, sure. Cancel me. It does nothing to my life. Like I don't rock with social media like that in the first place. Secondly, I'm not woke. Like I'm telling you about problems that have been perpetuating for, most if not all of my lifetime.
Right.
And I'm asking for solutions. I'm not asking for rhetoric. I'm not asking for a policy that leaves people behind. I'm asking for something that can actually solve the problem, and being legit about it. So I'm not entertained. But the entertainment part goes into how we consume this information. Again, I'm going to give Joe, I don't know if we have a counter, but this is in public the second time I'm saying Joe was right.
Yeah.
When you look at go ahead. I'm going to take a drink.
No, you're good.
Joe was right.
But yeah, I think to bring it back to the main focus of our topic tonight, which is infotainment. It's this informing entertainment that has become extremely popular. I think initially it seemed like there was more of a focus on maybe like the left-leaning crowd. I think like the Daily Show with Jon Stewart was one of the shows that I recall early on really kind of honing in on this level of we're talking about real serious issues, but at the same time, I'm going to be cracking jokes and we're going to put up funny graphics and, I'm going to be over the top kind of animated in some of the ways that I respond to these things.
In other words, the ability to discuss issues such as beef.
In other words, we understand. We just don't get it.
And at first, I thought it was good. I thought it was really positive that we could talk about these things and have an element of, oh, that's funny what he says, but also come away with, man, but it's also really messed up. But I think the more that I've seen a gravitation towards that, the more it feels like that presentation style is ultimately undercutting the actual information.
Right.
That we're not walking away from it feeling compelled to do something or to make a change or to see solutions, that it was simply enough to be entertained or to feel woke in this, oh, well, I laughed,
I'm aware of the problem.
But I'm aware of the problem. Yeah, exactly. Right. It's that awareness that ultimately was all that I was really going for. As long as I can, in conversation with somebody, be able to reference the things that are made at a very high level, then I feel like I've done my job to inform myself about the issues at hand. It's not really about finding actual solutions. And, I think we've talked about it. We talked about it specifically before with John Oliver, that there's a lot of bluffing that goes on with his segments, where the one where he was talking about data brokers and supposedly purchased all of this data or collected all of this data around Washington, D.C. and kind of threatened to release this information unless Congress did something to pass laws preventing the sale and brokerage of this information in the way that it's currently being done.
And if you happen to be a legislator who is feeling a little nervous right now about whether your information is in this envelope and you are terrified about what I might do with it, you might want to channel that worry into making sure that I can't do anything.
And yet, months later, we haven't heard anything about it. There's been no follow-up. There's no release of this information. There's no action in Congress going on for this to actually be changed. And so what was the point? I mean, essentially it was eyeballs, right? What better to get people...
But I said that.
Oh, you did. You absolutely did. I mean, this is my turn to say Andre was right. Joe was right and Andre was right. The only person who's not right is Chris, apparently. But he's the white guy on the show, so we all knew that was coming.
Oh, come on. I'm not doing that crap.
I know you're not. Harder. I do it to myself.
I'm just going to say try harder. Stop living your freaking Disneyland. No, I'm sorry.
Snow White's castle.
Yeah. I'm sorry. That was wrong. I shouldn't have said that.
No, whatever.
but that was my initial response to that. It's you can't have those cards and not play them. It seems wrong, right?
Yeah, looking back on it, I was very gung ho and supportive of like, oh no, I'm sure he'll do something with it, And I think I looked at like the lawsuits that had taken place with him and that oil guy, where he kept calling him out. But I realize now that there's right, and I get it to some degree that there's a certain level at which he's comfortable punching at.
Yeah, there was no upside for him.
Right. In the long run, what was ultimately going to happen but if you're going to do that, just publish it. Don't threaten to publish it if they don't do it. Just publish it. And because then the point is, if I couldn't have collected this in the first place.
If it wasn't available.
Exactly.
Right. And that's where it's dangerous. And I think that, and it's not to, actually it is to call John Oliver out. He's got a room full of writers.
He's got HBO money. Like
yeah. It's like Trevor Noah. He said, "Why is everybody on Phil Mickelson about the golf tournament thing? Mm-hmm. They're paying him $200 million." That is literally what he's not wrong. Like he's gonna bank off of, Saudi Arabia, whatever.
Right. And the fact that most people will feel the exact same way ultimately. That yes, there will be this initial pushback and the pundits will go crazy because it's a story they can focus on and it can make them seem like they're super pro-human rights or women's rights or whatever it is. And then it all fades to obscurity 3 weeks later and nobody cares about it.
The only people bringing up Khashoggi are journalists.
Right.
Like that is, and I want to be very clear. I'm not saying that what happened to him was justified. I saw I watched Fareed. I mess up everybody's name on CNN.
Zakaria, right?
Yeah. That sounds closer to what I was about to say. And he was talking about our complicated. It was like last weekend. Our complicated relationship with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And that wove itself into the story somehow. You can't, sure, MDS did that, got it. But what about the other things that has happened to people in that country? Why is that one person is more valuable than multitudes? Brittany Grimes. This is probably not going to be popular what I say next. I'm sorry. There are countless people across the globe, and there are more people in Russia, and I'm not saying that she's only advocating for herself, that have been wrongfully detained in that country. Me personally, I would not go to a hostile country, and then slip. That's just like not what I would do.
Yeah,
but
I mean, and she went there for a paycheck. Like she was playing basketball there, and she was getting paid, and so ultimately that was the decision that she made. And whether it was just a weed pen, as people want to make a big deal, or it was CBD or whatever, like she essentially gave them an excuse to get in trouble.
To put her in the spotlight.
And
now I'm being very careful with that because I get it. I straight up get it. I know it's complexities. Well, if the WNBA paid her more money, she wouldn't have to do that. Sure, got it.
That's not the 100%. World that we live in.
Or that's not where she was at that point.
Yeah.
Right? She knew she was going to Russia. She knew these things were illegal. And yes, she said she made a mistake. Got it. But I've traveled a lot, and there are some things like I just didn't do. It's like I've personally, when I pack a bag, I check it twice and sometimes 3 times to make sure I'm not forgetting.
Yeah, you're no Madison Cawthorn. You're not packing the heat in your
suitcase right?
3 different times at the Charlotte airport.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not. I do have sympathy, and I get it. I'm not trying to discount that, but I'm just saying, like, she's sucking up all the air in the room for people that may not have had CBD in their bags, right?
Well, and this outcry that, I think it was her girlfriend specifically, her wife, sorry, who basically was like, if there's anything that you can do, President Biden, just do it, and I'm sure that it was like somewhat within reason, that it's not like, well, hand over the keys to the country to Putin and then she can come home. But the underlying message still feels very, God, I'm going to say it, self-serving in that sense, where it's very singularly focused. It's not, hey, my wife is part of a, group of people that are being held unlawfully, or, that shouldn't be in prison, and we need to work to get all of them out. It seems like, I just want my wife to come home, and you need to focus on just getting that done. And maybe
that's the fence that I think that I'm emotionally riding on. Maybe that's what she could have meant, right?
Yeah.
I don't have an answer, but I'm also, maybe it's her part of her path to bring more exposure to the fact that there's multiple people. I think it's 33 people or 33 countries, 33 something or another, that are like wrongfully detained in hostile countries.
Yeah.
And here, let me bring this back personally for me. So we were planning on going to Peru. My father-in-law is back there now, but Peru is like a hot spot right now. And our family members are like, even ones that live in Peru are like, nah, not a good time right now.
Yeah.
So, like, you've got to know when a place that you would typically want to go adventure to, if it's a hotspot. When has Russia not been a hotspot? Right? When has Afghanistan not been a hotspot? Like, we, seriously, as a couple, we've been thinking about going to Israel. And my biggest reservation is like, Israel's not safe.
Right. Egypt is, like on the top of my bucket list of countries I'd love to travel to someday, but you're not going to catch me planning a trip there anytime soon because of the unrest and everything that's going on over there. Like, it's not worth it to put myself in that level of potential danger.
Or the risk is too high. Not that it's not worth it. It's just that
but I think those are the same things ultimately.
Sure. That's fair, right? But I look at it like face value risk. Am I doing that? Probably not. Right. It turns into like the scary movie complex that we have. If 20 people died last summer and 15 people died the last summer and 14 people died the summer before that at Lake, kill a motherfucker. Why am I going to go camp there this summer?
Yes. Well, because you want to prove what a tough, MFer you are, and because the cheerleaders in the skimpy short shorts are really wanting to go.
No, I'll pass.
Yeah.
I'm good.
I hear you.
So that's where I feel like, and I don't want to talk about that particular instance that we're having in the country, but the media's not doing her any justice.
Well, and I think it also kind of brings up the point of those. You talked about the 33 people or 33 countries or whatever it is where people are being unlawfully detained or wrongfully detained. How many people in the United States right now are wrongfully detained?
Right.
I mean, Gitmo still operating, right?
Technically, it's in Cuba.
But I'm just saying.
Closer to home is Rikers Island. Closer to home is like any of these privately funded prisons. And there's a lot of... And not everybody knows Kim Kardashian. Not everybody's going to get on her radar and have somebody to advocate for them. Yeah. And it's not to minimize anybody's like strife. And I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying, like, the media does a great injustice to those people. That's why I don't trust you. Like, neither one of us are saying at any point that Brittany Grimer's case is not important, but we're also saying that, but we are saying that there are other things that are wrong that we should be reporting about.
In addition to her case.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Not that every story's that's reported has got to be negative news.
No.
Well, because on the contrary, regardless of your perception or your view of it, negative or positive, negative, somebody's in jail wrongfully or whatever, or somebody saves a cat from a tree, positive, it's news. What's going to reach out to the people that want to be informed? I think that, average people want to be informed. They want to be aware of things that are relevant and that they should be aware of, not regardless of their relevancy, to help them to make better informed decisions. Not what you cherry pick and tell us what we want to hear.
See, and it's interesting.
Or what you want us to hear.
Because Christy was giving me crap a couple of months ago because I was sitting on the couch reading the local newspaper. Not like the Wilmington newspaper, but literally like the Island Gazette that is printed 2 doors down from my office right here. I know the guy that owns it and runs it, not like really well, but like neighbors here, so I say hey every once in a while. And I get so much more enjoyment out of that because I feel like it's a couple of things. One, I mean, obviously it's hyper local, right? It's all the stuff that's going on right here. So I feel it's super relevant to my life in that moment. But secondly, I can read a headline, maybe read a sentence or two, kind of skim through it, and then decide whether or not I want to finish reading it. Right. When it comes to television news coverage, I feel like that's significantly less of an option, unless you're pre-recording everything and then just fast-forwarding through it. Now, on the internet, yeah, it's a lot of the same, but I still feel like there's a level of bombardment that occurs with that. I mean, how many times do you click on an article, do you go to read an article headline, and a video is up at the top, and the video isn't actually about the article or the topic? It's like it's tangentially related, but it's not like the actual news coverage on that article.
Way more often than not. And the tableau and the other spammy articles at the bottom, like I don't have time for that. I choose not to. It's like I can't trust you not because that your intent is wrong, it's your execution is flawed.
Yes.
Right? If your intent of going to journalism school is to be a journalist, if your intent of being an editor is to make sure that the story is conveyed properly, your execution's lacking. And what's sad is, I'll give you 2 recent current events that just kind of blow my mind. Uvalde and the January 6th committee. Mm-hmm. I'll start with the lighthearted one first. The January 6th committee that case was proven on the first airing of that committee. There has been literally no evident movement from the DOJ to prosecute or to even indict the former president.
I actually read that the committee hearings could be detrimental to the DOJ prosecuting, because typically in a prosecution case like this, in a criminal case, you want your witnesses speaking as little as possible publicly, especially in an under oath setting like this, because then it gives the defense an opportunity to go back when you come back to retestify to then pick things apart. But that's not that should preclude them from going through with it, but I still think ultimately what it boils down to is that Merrick Garland, Attorney General Garland, does not want to prosecute a former president. That they are essentially standing by this historical precedent of not prosecuting former or presidents for this kind of thing. But I say this kind of thing meaning breaking the law, not trying to overthrow the government, because I'm pretty sure we've never had a former president try to do that.
Touch and go. I believe that after the Civil War, there was a little bit of that, and even within the southern states, there's a little bit of some strife there also. So, like in recent history, sure, but has it been done before? Yeah, it's been done before.
I feel like Andrew Jackson. I don't know why, but that name just feel like if anybody was going to do it, it would probably be him.
So I think the case has been made. So I'm not critiquing the committee. I just think that, again, my gut feeling is nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And the media's job is not to give me pundits who tell me what their sources are saying. It's to factually report on it.
Oh, even better. Give me law professors telling me whether or not they think former President Trump should be indicted or charged with crimes. That's what really makes a difference in my life. The number of articles that I've read, or not even read, but the headlines that I've seen, where it's, former Harvard law professor says Trump will most likely be indicted or should be, could face criminal charges. It's of course he could. Yes. No, duh. Is that really what we're sitting here talking about? Whether or not he could face charges when the committee is literally investigating whether or not crimes occurred?
They'd be like gangbusters in Vegas, right? Because they got the odds packed.
Captain Obvious.
Thing, which is painful to talk about, is Uvalde. I unfortunately watched the video of police officers, hanging out in the hallway. I recommend that you do not watch that video. If you're listening and it happens to show up, please do not watch it. Now, here's what blew my mind. As the news is reporting on the release of the video, as they're showing the video, they're saying that parents were upset because the video got leaked and they wanted an opportunity to watch it together. And it should have been released a different way. But what are they doing at the same time? They're showing the video.
Yeah, this video that we're about to show you should not have been leaked or released, but we got hold of it and everybody else is playing it, so we're going to play it too, because God forbid we miss out on a couple of eyeballs here or there. You can't go somewhere else for your news. You've got to stay here.
Yeah, it's just where's your... Sure, facts should be neutral and they should be objective, right? But where's your compassion? It just gave me this really bad taste to see that. So it's oh, that's interesting. So their game is what it is. It's they have no incentive to, in my opinion, not a journalist. Maybe a journalist can tell me, enlighten us, because I can just tell you my perception of what you're doing is way off of what I believe you should be doing, or it's way far away from what you say you're trying to accomplish. The two, they don't match, and it's disappointing. I can't say it any better than that. It's just disappointing. And I probably already got canceled for the whole Brittany Grimes thing. So I really don't care. It's I don't want to be entertained. I don't believe CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, ABC, NBC, CBS. Don't ever do another 4th of July celebration ever again. It's not your job. The fact that you're putting so much production and production cost into a 4th of July celebration blows my mind. I just don't get that.
Look at the Macy's Day Parade. Or the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Yeah, don't understand that.
How much money goes into that? How much effort, and yet all because they know that if that's not what they were putting on, people wouldn't pay as much attention. Not that nobody would pay attention to the news that they should be covering.
Yeah, New Yorkers would pay attention to the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Somebody in Arizona, probably not so much, right? But you guys bombard the airwaves with that parade. If I don't live in New York, I really don't care. Yeah. That parade is, I think, over 100 years old, or 75 years, one of the two. What happened before national broadcasts went that long? right? Or they were able to go across the country like that. It's not, the Macy Days Parade is not an institution. I mean, how old is it?
Well, before that, they would report it on it in the newspaper, but it was much less enthralling.
Yeah. So how old is it? Age. I don't care. How old is it? Started in 1924.
Okay.
Yeah,
So it's almost 100 years old.
Yeah, so nobody, like, it wasn't that big of a deal before. People may have reported on it, and that's it. They moved on, but, like, that's not news. Like, I don't need you to entertain me. I don't care about Patagonia, like CNN. Like, I don't care. Not that I don't care about it, but
the region or the company.
Wow, that's a. Well, I guess I don't. Well, I know there's a company, but I don't buy their stuff because all the finance bros. It's kind of like how some group of people ruined Carhartt for me. Like, I used to actually wear Carhartt to go to work, and then, a jacket I could buy for like $50 became like $220.
They are not inexpensive, but full disclosure, they are one of my customers.
I think they're great. I mean, I do enjoy the clothes. I just don't understand, like, actually I understand that it became like a trendy thing to do. But to my original point, I'm just very disenchanted with what the news, or how we receive information as a society, and the purpose of delivering that information to you. It's not to solve anything. Yeah. I just don't understand that.
And I think it's really twofold, like what we've kind of talked about here. That's the lack of integrity and the inability to present information without opinion by the news itself, by journalistic organizations, and it's the assumption of that role to some degree by entertainment properties.
Yeah.
And those two things are not ultimately leading to a betterment of society, to a better informed citizenry. It's not really creating anything except for a sense of numbness to the way that news is presented, and a belief that awareness is the same as doing something about it when it comes to entertainment.
Yeah, that is in my corporate career. I would work with people, and I'm like, yeah, so you have a problem, and I'd always be waiting. So what are we going to do about it? Not that I'm asking the person to tell me what they're going to do to solve it, but like, does it move you to action? Like, to keep telling me there's something broken without any idea of, okay, so what's next?
Can it even be fixed? Right?
Yeah.
Is this something that we can solve?
I mean, I throw around, I don't have a solve a lot, because like, I know that you just can't keep stating problems without,
well,
okay, what's next, or is there a next?
And you would always famously say, we can't park on that speed bump. Right? And that's the thing, is that it's very easy, especially in business, I think, but in life in general, to be distracted by what is ultimately not a roadblock of a problem. Something that may be annoying or irritating, or something that's completely out of your control that you wish was different, but it's not preventing you from achieving what you need. So how do we get around it, right? Or maybe it is something that you can solve, right? Maybe it's something that by sitting down with the right person or having the right conversation, you can actually make progress in solving that. But if we don't sit down and figure out what that solution plan might look like, we're just going to sit here and waste time doing nothing about it.
I've been impressed with the countless attorneys or lawyers that have talked about the true problem with Roe versus Wade. And the fact that for some reason people are missing the point in the Supreme Court overturning Roe versus Wade.
Mm-hmm.
And there are two parts. One, there is technically no, obviously it is factual, truthful, that there is no constitutional right to abortion.
Right.
The issue and the basis of Roe versus Wade had nothing to do with abortion.
Right.
It had to do with privacy.
Yeah.
But the narrative is abortion has been taken away as a right. And I don't understand it. Like, I just don't understand the fallacy of that way of thinking. I just don't get how people miss the point. And the media is partially to blame for that.
Yeah, because they play into it.
Yeah.
It's the headline grabber, you know. Roe v. Wade decision, abortion ban now goes into effect in certain states, right? Oh, don't forget that part. Well, it doesn't fit on the headline, so let's just cut it off. But
it's the young girl that said, like, she got like the request for money too. Like, I tell you what, I donated to I think it was Vote Blue one time before 2020, and every Democrat running for office since then. And I think I specifically donated money to the Biden-Harris ticket, but you better believe every Democrat in the country wanted like just $5.
Yep.
We just want $5.
I need about $3.50.
Yeah.
And so that when that lady said that, I was like, she's so spot on with that. It is so, but that's the loop. You kept seeing that loop everywhere you went. Like every time I opened up the news on my browser or whatever, she went viral for that basically.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like are we doing the thing though that we just talked about not doing, where we're sitting here talking about this problem, but we're not really presenting solutions for it, or like how are we going to solve this, right? What can we do ultimately to try and make this better? I think, first off, like obviously there's the need in today's digital world for our attention. And we can vote, much like you vote with your wallet, you can vote with your attention span. And so the things that you engage with and the things that you pay attention to and the headlines that you click on are ultimately what are going to be perpetuated going forward. So being more discerning about what it is that we engage with could be part of that solution. But obviously you and I doing that alone isn't going to be enough to solve that problem. Doing what we're doing here hopefully is helping, because we're trying to bring to light these issues and some of the fallacies that are being thrown around right now. But I don't know. I mean, is there some other piece that you see as a potential solution?
Yeah, I think but yes, I do. I think a simple solution is stop giving me random. It's two parts, right? But they play into the same lane. Okay. We can all agree that the comment sections on anything on the internet that's a treasure trove of WTF 99% of the time. What if I owned that company, if I owned the New York Times, for example,
mm-hmm.
and I had a department that actually went through the comments and listened to the voices of, this isn't really relevant. No, I know. It's a big ask, but it's real-time engagement with what you're giving to your customers. And if you reach out and build a relationship with that customer and say, hey, so you did say that this wasn't relevant. Why is that? Do a sidebar. Reach out to people and make that part of your practice. If you want to be like any type of business wants to grow, media is no different. You can't assume that people are just going to walk through your doors or just going to accept what you say. because when you're wrong, there are repercussions to that. So I would suggest that listen to your customers. The second thing I would say is, like, stop with the bias polls. Like, there's nothing worse. Like, I saw, like, I keep seeing polls commissioned by people that have a bias, right? Like Ipsos polls.
You remember when Trump had a poll where it was like, take this poll to save America? And I did, because I was just really curious how poorly it was going to be formatted. And it was so blatantly biased, where it was like, how much do you not trust the liberal media? A lot, a whole lot, or a whole heck of a lot were like the only options, Like, it was stuff like that, where it was obviously written to create a specific outcome. And
Right.
Surveying and polling without bias is incredibly difficult. There's a science to it. I recall that from our time at E-Area in trying to do some very basic surveys about
Right.
technology and platforms and scripting languages and stuff like that, where it was really easy to not recognize the bias that you were creating with the way that you formatted it. It's as simple as, where does the marker start on your 0 to 10 scale? Like, that in and of itself has the potential to create bias. And so I don't know. It's sorry, that was a little bit of an aside there, but
No, but it's fair. But truly engage people to figure out where they're engaging with you. Reach out to them. Where they're not, solicit the information, and try to remove as much bias as possible. The challenge is, how do you become better?
right.
Not that you are sitting on a throne, and maybe media companies, since they're not owned solely by one entity anymore, that may not be that much of a concern. But if you're trying to preserve your professional life as a company, you got to do something different. And buying time from Ipsos to create a poll for you, but you have bias. It's like Facebook's whatever project,
the Edge project, yeah.
Every time I see that commercial, Ipsos is becoming one of my least favorite companies, because they buy a poll from them, and if you watch the entire commercial, you're like, yo, that's a lot of bias. 84% of Americans believe the country is going in the wrong way. That's not true.
Only when it comes to big tech being silenced by big government.
Like, what?
Congress is going to make it harder for us to create jobs and make the world a better place because they're big doo-doo meanie heads.
Newsflash, Zuckerberg just went on record saying he's going to lay off like 10,000 employees or something thousand employees. I don't want to misquote it. So he and his company control that, not the government. So yeah, there are solves. It's like being able to. When I was in real estate, I was doing a listing presentation, and I had some stats, right? And somebody told me, stats can say whatever you want them to say. And I never approach a presentation in that manner. Like, I don't think I've ever done that.
You're not out looking for the facts to verify your opinion or to make your point for you.
Right. I'm pretty neutral when it comes to man, that's 30% of these results are bad. So I'm not going to take it off the board.
Right.
And just not share with anybody. It's silly.
Yeah.
Because if you're trying to improve something, you can use that negative 30% or the non-favorable 30% to show opportunity to make it better, not to hide it from people. So there's a lot of that going on. Like, you can convince people to do a lot of things that they probably wouldn't do, but if you're the expert in the room, your job is that much easier. One of the reasons I don't like sales in general, and I did do sales for a short amount of time, both in real estate and another field, because people think they close people on deals. That is not true.
Put that coffee down. Coffee's for closers only.
Like, if I'm going to buy something, I've already decided to buy it. Right. End of story. That's like, if you're a salesperson and you think I'm wrong, that's a hill I'm willing to die on.
I mean, how many times at E-Area did we hear the phrase, what do you need to close this today? You know? Well, I need this person to have already decided before we had this conversation that they were going to buy it. And if they weren't there, I mean, are there things that I could get to do, make them do it today versus tomorrow? Maybe. But ultimately, I'm giving away something I don't need to give away just so you can have the result sooner than you want it, or, you know, faster than it would naturally come.
And that's just weird. So, like, we've got to get out of there. There's a lot of tropes that we operate under as a society that are just, they're not true. And I think that, I think that those two things, and getting out of the mentality that you're convincing, you can convince people, but to your point, you're giving away something that you probably don't necessarily need to give away. People are smart enough that they're going to have a predetermination of what they're going to do. You can present them new facts. Hopefully they're truthful. Okay. And they're going to decide from there, right? The media's job is is to eliminate as much bias as possible. Literally show both sides of the story. Don't make Nina Turner don't make her the sacrificial lamb. That is a prime example of what I'm talking about. They're trying to increase ad revenue either on the front end on the episode or the back end on the clip.
Yep.
And she's the sacrificial lamb, and she loses credibility. Thus, in turn, like, the network as a whole will lose credibility. So, Brian Stelter, I think the name of your show, Reliable Sources, is great. John Oliver, I think that what you're trying to accomplish with your writers and producers, this is not a personal shot at you. I'm just giving you feedback, unsolicited as it may be, to say that you're not doing yourself any justice. If your objective as a company is to churn through customers, as a whole, as a society, that is working very well. If your goal and objective as a company is to have repeat customers, we are way off the marker for that. So, and that's across industries, and media just happens to, like, especially infotainment happens to be the target today. So that's all I got there.
No, it's well said. Well, I guess that's it for the big rant today, isn't it?
Are you not entertained?
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
Are you not infotained?
That is still one of my favorite movies. I thought it was a great movie.
That's okay.
Yeah. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
Whatever. Agree to disagree. Well, we're glad you joined us. This is something that we've been talking about for a while. It's intellectually frustrating to me. Like if you can see through the BS and nobody's calling it out, it's just like I probably couldn't do an interview on a news show. Like, are you full of shit? Like, what's wrong?
Like, whoa! Sir, this is a Wendy's.
Yeah. So I just hope that people start to, like, many episodes ago we talked about, and because the big, like, blocker for me is the fact that critical thinking is not something that we as a society or in our educational system, political science system, or a lot of systems don't use anymore. We need to get back to basics and ask some better questions. We're really glad you joined us. There is a guy, Spencer. I'm going to steal something from him, but also give him credit for Spencer Core. And I am killing names today. Spencer Cornelia. He's somebody I've been watching a lot on YouTube. And he made a comment about his YouTube page where he never asked people to subscribe. So from going forward, we're going to stop asking people to subscribe. But Leon Lush is always talking about a hip thrust. So hip thrust that subscribe button. And I've been watching a lot of Leon Lush's videos lately because they're pretty funny commentaries on what happens in social media.
Hip thrust that subscribe button.
Yeah, it's hilarious. So shout out to Leon Lush. I'm a new subscriber to your channel, and I think you have some great stuff. So shout out to you there. But what I'm gonna personally stop doing. Chris, he's a grown man. He can do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you know where you can find us. You can find us on YouTube, obviously. Listen to us on. You can probably still listen to us on SoundCloud. We host all of our podcasts on Riverside.fm, which has been a great service. This is not an advertisement. Spotify,
Hold on one
Apple.
second. I hate to interrupt you and then to follow that up by correcting you in public, but we host on Fireside.fm. We record on Riverside.fm.
Ooh, that was a twofer.
Yeah.
Yes, both things are correct. You can find us on Google Podcasts, also Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I said that already. Pandora. We're
iHeartRadio. We're new on iHeartRadio.
What? So we are super glad that people listen. If you like it, please let us know. You can send us comments, suggestions, any type of feedback, positive, negative, at comments@chrisandandreshow.com. You can always send me an email at andre@chrisandandreshow.com.
Yeah, you got that out. Or you can reach me via email at chris@chrisandandreshow.com.
You may see some stuff happening in the Twitters. We're not really checking it out because it's just not the spot.
Oh, don't do that. If you see anything on Twitter these days, it's not me.
I might low-key put some stuff out there. But I'm trying to just stay out of that echo chamber. But we're super glad you joined us. I can't wait tonight to watch the season finale and possibly the show finale of Miss Marvel. Looking forward to that.
Me too.
My youngest brother, said that Thor: Love and Thunder was fantastic. So
did he like the Tomorrow War? Is that the one who liked the Tomorrow War?
No.
Okay.
That was my.
Okay, then I like his opinion.
So I'm probably going to try to weasel some time in there. My background hasn't changed much, but I'm operating out of 10% of my office in the middle of a remodel, and it's been hell. My lighting is suffering for it now. I can notice as the sun's going down. But we definitely, and my buddy here, my boy, my best friend, just had a baby, so I'm super proud of him and happy for him and his family. And tomorrow is his birthday, so I'm super excited about that. I'm going to be the first person that calls you, or I might even call you when I wake up. So if you get a missed call, I want to at least be the first person to call you.
That's cool. No problem. You'll be the first person I call back.
Well, I appreciate that, and we really do enjoy doing this. So we do this we do this because we enjoy doing it.
I was gonna say we do it out of love for each other.
I'm just like that. Just sounds. We just because we love doing it. We love challenging the way people these are things that we think about throughout the week. Yeah. So yeah, if you like the Chris and Andre show, let us know. Hit us up however you want to. I got nothing else. Chris, you got anything?
Nope. I think that was very uneloquently put, but
I try my best.
There's a lot of words to say a couple of things, but usually it's me on the other end of this, so that's the only reason I'm pointing it out this time. But no, this is great. Really good to get back into it. We hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll do my best to get this episode up as quickly as possible because I'm not falling into that trap of having backlogs of episodes built up. If you haven't, head over to YouTube and check out some of our shorts. Chris has been working some magic with his video editing skills to come up with some very, what he considers to be very entertaining shorts.
You're talking about yourself in third person, right?
He does. Yes, he does.
Okay. Just want to clarify that. So We're super glad you joined us. As always, I'm Andre.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Hey guys, it's Chris from the Chris and Andre Show here. Just wanted to say thanks for checking out our show. We hope you enjoyed it. If you would, subscribe, like, make sure to hit the notification bell so you get alerts when we post new videos, and leave a comment with your favorite part of the most recent episode that you watched. We'll see you on the next one.